Hello, hello, and welcome to Catalyst MLM. I'm Brian Switchko, and today on the show we have Dr. Steve Taubman. Steve has a varied and unusual background that has earned him the accolade of a Renaissance man. He's gained success as a physician, an entertainer, a trainer, and is the author of the #1 Amazon self-help bestseller Unhypnosis, where he teaches individuals how to reinvent their lives. He has a specialty in network marketing and personal growth, and has really built some amazing things and taught other people how to build amazing things by unlocking their true selves. Thanks so much for being on.
Hey, it's a great pleasure to be here, Brian. How you doing?
Good. And the first time I heard your story, I think my mouth dropped and then immediately was just smiling ear to ear. I was like, I need to get to know that guy because you started off as a chiropractor and then went to magic and then hypnosis and now do keynote speaking and primarily help people in network marketing be successful. How?
It's been an interesting journey. I was a chiropractor for many years. Also had a very successful network marketing business inside of my chiropractic practice. And got to a point in practice where I knew there was more for me to do, more that I wanted to do with my life. Ended up selling my practice and using the skills I developed as a magician part-time to go around the world performing at corporate events and at restaurants and all sorts of fun places, entertaining people, but also demonstrating the power of the subconscious mind and demonstrating how we don't always see things the way they really are.
Yeah.
That led me into hypnosis, and as a hypnotist, I've had the great opportunity to travel the world and do some really remarkable things where I would put people into hypnosis and then have them believe all sorts of strange and unusual things. And I got to a point in my work as a stage hypnotist where an idea occurred to me. And I thought, if I can get people to shift their mindset or shift their emotions quickly on stage, as I do, as you've seen, they're watching a movie in their hypnotic state and they think it's funny, then it's sad, then it's romantic, and it's scary. If I can get them to change emotions quickly, can I also take network marketers and entrepreneurs and be able to help them to rapidly change the way that they think, to be able to shift their emotional state to a more empowered state? And then I also, on stage, before everybody's eyes, get rid of people's fears and phobias. Somebody's afraid of spiders or snakes. And if I could do that in an instant, could I use the same technology to help network marketers pick up the phone and talk to people about their business? Or can I help people to feel comfortable going up to somebody at Starbucks, or just lead their team or confront somebody about something they're not doing? Can I help people be more courageous?
Yeah.
Right? And then, of course, the other thing I do on stage now is a regular, kind of a regular thing. I was just at the ANMP, the Association of Network Marketing Professionals, and I did my hypnosis show, and then the next morning I did my keynote. And during the show, I had one of the participants, who was a relatively shy fellow, and he had asked me, he said, "Can you help me be more successful?" I said, "Sure, absolutely." So during the show, I tapped him on the shoulder while he was hypnotized, and I said, "When you wake up, you are the featured keynote speaker here at the conference. And you're here to teach us the 3 things that you've learned about network marketing and get everybody all charged up and empowered. And you'll do it in exactly 3 minutes. After which, by the way, you'll suddenly become a ballerina."
Nice touch.
Yeah, it was a nice touch. So for 3 minutes, this guy jumped out of his seat and he just had the room rocking. I mean, he really knew how to access those resources, to be courageous, to be empowered, to be inspiring. And the thought is, what does that mean for your team? What does that mean for you out there in the world? Can you also be inspired to take action, to overcome procrastination, to really be a consistent player on the stage of network marketing? And it turns out that it's a very, very powerful tool. In my presentation, I shared a testimonial from a woman by the name of Svetlana Kim. You might know Lana. She's a brilliant woman. She's part of Who's Who in American Businesswomen. She works with the White House. Powerful, amazing woman. And when I met her, she was already somewhat successful. She had a best-selling book called White Pearl and I. It's a memoir. But she still had some psychological barriers. And that's what I specialize in, is psychological barriers to her ultimate success. And so we did a very brief hypnotic process with her, and in doing so, she shed some layers of guilt and fear that came from this idea that if you're going to be successful, then that means that you're making everybody who's not successful feel bad.
Yeah.
And she came from that kind of background. So we changed something for her in a very powerful way. And suddenly she started having magical things happening in her life, including the very next day, she had a call from Condoleezza Rice to be on a keynote with her.
Wow.
And then she got a call from Marlo Thomas, from That Girl.
Yeah.
to head up a women helping battered women kind of a program. So,
Let's
so it's really magical stuff that would take place. Let me get this out of the way there.
Yeah, let's go back to what you did at ANMP, because it's mind-boggling. Because getting someone to stand up and, for anyone who's ever seen a hypnosis show, quack like a duck, or do anything else, is it's entertaining, but the principles are the same. And getting someone to stand up and deliver a 3-minute keynote with no preparation and no public speaking abilities, and a big fear of doing so, and then just unconsciously wipe everything from their mind and then have them jump up, is crazy. But it's also a great example of what can be done consciously. So tell me a little bit about how you teach people to reprogram. I mean, people a lot of times use affirmations, but what's the correlation there?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, first and foremost, everything that we do is designed to help people become motivated and to motivate their team. And most of the things that are currently in use to try to motivate people don't work. We use cruises and cars and prizes and piles of money, and that stuff doesn't really do it, because motivation has to be intrinsic. It's about your beliefs, not about your pocketbook.
Mm-hmm.
It's about your imagination and not about desire. So a lot of network marketers learn about finding your why.
Yeah.
I'm going to go find my why. What's my purpose in doing this? And that's great, except it's inadequate if your beliefs don't line up with what you're trying to accomplish. So we see lots and lots of network marketers out there working furiously to try to find their why, and they do. They know why they want to do it.
Yeah.
Because if they don't change their beliefs, nothing happens. So now it all comes down to belief. So in the show, and we demonstrate that by taking a group of people and telling them that they don't even remember their own first name. Can't think of it. I'll offer them on stage. I'll pull $1,000 out of my pocket, $100 bills. I'll give you $1,000 if you can tell me your name. They won't do it. That's a pretty powerful why.
Yeah.
Right? Still won't do it. They're embarrassed in front of 500, 600, 700 people. Still won't do it, because no matter how deep your desire, if you don't have the belief, it won't work. So that brings us to the idea of how do you change belief. And as you said, affirmations are a very powerful tool that a lot of people use, not powerful enough.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens with affirmations is that we're saying something to our conscious mind over and over and over again in an effort to ultimately get that information past the conscious mind down into the subconscious mind, where change can then take place.
Right.
See, what we know from the work of Maxwell Maltz, who wrote Psycho-Cybernetics, is anything that lives in your subconscious drives you inexorably toward your success,
right,
or your failure, depending on what's in there, right? So we need to be able to change the subconscious. And what affirmations do is that they speak to the conscious mind, which is your critical factor. It's the part that rejects everything. So if you've ever done affirmations, you've said, I'm strong, handsome, and healthy. And then a little voice in your head says, no, I'm not. I'm strong, handsome, and healthy. No, I'm not. And it's like a tug of war.
right.
Your willpower trying to wrestle a new belief into your subconscious mind. And whenever willpower and imagination come into conflict with one another, imagination always wins. Imagination is the domain of the subconscious mind.
Right.
So if we want to make a change, we have to go directly to the subconscious. And that way we can do it much more easily, much more effortlessly. So there's a 3-step process that we teach that allows that to happen. And it's actually what happens on stage for entertainment, but it's really what you need to do if you want to transform your beliefs and get the results that people get when they have the right beliefs.
And so, I mean, you've been doing this. You haven't done clinical hypnosis, right? But it's the.
I don't.
Oh, really?
I don't run a practice for it. Of course, I spent 14 years in a clinical practice as a chiropractor, and after that, I was really happy to be off, out of the clinic and the road. But I do some phone coaching with people who are in grave need, and of course, at every show, I do some of this stuff. We do phobia cures, we do empowerment presentations, and we do things to help transform people so that they very quickly can make that change. So many times I go to conferences, and up to the time that I start my presentation, they've already heard hundreds of people on stage saying, it's all about your subconscious mind.
Right.
They're like, yeah, it's all about my subconscious mind. But what does that mean?
Right. It's very difficult to change that.
Yeah, but when they see it, that's when it really starts to change.
So, from your perspective and helping people, did you realize anything about yourself and your own beliefs that you needed to change?
Lots. I mean, I think that, they say necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
And yes, I grew up in a very neurotic family on Long Island. I was a neurotic kid, dysfunctional stuff going on in my family. I was depressed. I was anxious. I was insecure. I was filled with shame, and it colored my life.
Yeah.
Even though I became successful outwardly, it took a long time for me to like let go of some of that negativity
Mhm.
that I could embrace the experience and then like take it to the next level.
Yeah.
So I had to learn this stuff. I had to learn what really changes beliefs. I did all the affirmations. I spent years, pounding away at affirmations. I spent
Yeah.
years trying to find my why. And, like a lot of other people, it's exhausting and it's depressing when you
Mhm.
do it and it doesn't work, because then you think, what's wrong with me?
Right.
You don't think there's something wrong with the technique. It's what's wrong
Yeah.
with me. And it turns out there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that you've got stuff in your head that you haven't used a legitimate
Yeah.
method to remove.
And I think you hit something really important there because, in network marketing, everybody says it's all about duplication. It's about duplication. And, there's a few pieces to this, right? There's the first piece, which is what are you doing? Is it internet marketing? Is it how you run a home meeting? Whatever it may be. That's the what. But then, the root, kind of like where people are coming from, what they've been through, what they've experienced, and what they're carrying with them, that's not duplicatable. People have to work through that on their own, and it's not going to be the same process for every person. So what would you say to someone like that is having trouble breaking through to team members and kind of overlooking that?
Well, we're working on putting together programs for.
I heard was we were putting together programs that.
Oh, okay.
Go for it.
So we've been putting together programs that team leaders can use in order to influence their entire team. But what they're based on is this 3-step model for changing beliefs or reprogramming the subconscious mind. So the first thing that needs to happen, whether this is you doing it for yourself or you working with your team so that they individually do the same thing, the first step that needs to happen is what's called creating receptivity, which essentially means making the mind receptive to the changes. Now, the problem is, again, with affirmation.
Kind of the equivalent of sanding before painting.
Yeah, exactly. You have to sand before you paint.
Yeah.
So most of us are not particularly receptive to new information. Our critical mind, our conscious mind, stands guard and keeps us from accepting anything new.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend to be fairly arrogant. We think we already know everything. And so as long as you think you know everything, you're not going to open yourself to a new paradigm, to a new way of thinking. So we use a variety of techniques for creating receptivity. One of them is what's called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, where we do what's called a pattern interrupt.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll do a magic trick, and a magic trick will startle people. And in startling people, it kind of interrupts the ongoing chatter inside their heads. We create a moment of silence where we could slip the message in. Right? So that's the power of doing something unexpected.
Right.
We also do it by proving to people that their minds don't always work in the predictable ways they think they will. A lot of times I'll do something on stage. I'll say, everybody take one hand, put it alongside of you like this, and they'll do that. I say, pull back 3 fingers so you're making the sign of a gun. They'll do that. I say, now touch your tip of your finger to your thumb so you have a circle. They all do that. I say, look at your circle, look at my circle, put it right on your chin, and freeze. And they all do that. And I say, look how few of you know your chin is.
Yeah.
And you probably didn't even notice that because the words and the visual are not congruent, and that's a gap in our perception. We don't know how to resolve those gaps, and so there's these things that we need to be made aware of that allow us to be more receptive. The other way that we create receptivity is by simply putting the mind in a relaxed state of concentration, a hypnotic state, a trance state, a meditative state, if you will. And by creating that state of mind, now the mind is open to positive and beneficial ideas. Then we go on to step 2, which is called eliminating negativity. So now, as you said, this is different for everybody. Everybody comes into network marketing with their own baggage. So what we do is we teach a technique that allows you to become present to your baggage, to be aware of what your baggage is, and to use a technique to see it, spot it, set it aside. See it, spot it, set it aside. And that's a neuro-linguistic process as well, and it's a very effective process. It's the same thing I do on stage when I have people get rid of their fears of snakes. Right. And instantaneously, I'll take somebody who's been deadly afraid of snakes and then bring a live snake up on stage, and they'll end up kissing the snake.
That's not sanitary.
So it's dramatic, powerful, and it's not just theoretical. This is something that really works. So we remove the negative, regardless of what it is for you. That's what we're going to do. And only once we've done step 1 and step 2 does step 3, installing positive messages, make any sense at all? Step
Right.
3 is what everybody's doing affirmations to try to accomplish.
So,
But if you haven't already created a receptive mind, if you haven't
yeah.
already removed the negative, then you're putting the positive on top of the negative, and it's like, putting whipped cream on a pile of dog.
Yep.
So we have to get the dog poo out before we. Now the other
Right.
challenge with affirmations is that who made them up?
Yeah.
Who came up with those affirmations? And generally, it's you. You came up with your own affirmations, and you're not in a position to come up with your own affirmations, because if you had a strong understanding of what it was that successful people believed, you'd already be successful.
Right.
It's your conscious mind trying to tell your conscious mind not to be your conscious mind, and it doesn't work. It's like trying to pull yourself out of the water when you're drowning.
Right.
You need something to come from above. And so what we've done is we've created a program where the messages, the affirmations that come after receptivity and after elimination are messages that come from the top 25 network marketers in the world.
Mm-hmm.
What do they believe? You see, because we make up stupid affirmations. We say things like, "I'm a millionaire. I'm rich," right? And the truth is that when you meet the Jordan Adlers of the world and the Jules Prices of the world and all the successful network marketers at the top of their game, they're not going around saying, "I'm a millionaire. I'm rich." That's not the way they think. What you want to do is you want to duplicate the way they think, not saying things that you think are going to get you where they are.
So would you say that it's accurate to think the way that they think when they're successful, but act the way that they acted when they got started? So, I mean, because I see a lot of people that try and jump in and they're like, try and be an internet marketing expert from day one versus, Jordan Adler, if I remember the story correctly, got started slowly, and failed several times and then learned, but that mindset, you don't want the beginning mindset, you want the success mindset.
You want the success mindset, and you want as much of the success action steps as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So, whenever possible, you want to learn from other people's errors, not from your own errors.
Yeah.
But that's the easy part. Brian, I mean, there are so many people in the industry who are out there to train you in what to do, what to say, how to do it. My little, kind of corner of this industry is I'm not so concerned about what you do as much as who you are.
Right.
What's going on the inside. Because if I can shift that neurology, we end up creating what we call prosperity neurology, which essentially means that you're wired for success.
Right.
Your reticular activating system, the part of your mind that can spot opportunity, is present.
So, I mean, I've heard over the years countless stories about people who do just amazing things. I mean, it could be building a network marketing business with, 3 kids and 3 jobs and, working an hour a day, whatever it may be. Or it could be the people who, I think the metaphor here would be 2 mice fall into a bucket of milk and one mouse says, "Oh, I guess we're dead," and sinks to the bottom and drowns, and then the other mouse just keeps swimming and swimming and swimming, and right before it's about to just have nothing left to give, it turns to butter and it climbs its way out. So
That was from Pulp Fiction.
Really?
Yeah, it was.
I knew the metaphor. I did not know it was a Pulp Fiction reference.
Christopher Walken tells that story.
That is awesome. I need to watch that movie again now. So from a people standpoint, people do that, and some people just give up before they've ever started, and some people fight through and conquer amazing things. And the difference there is not biology. It's not someone stronger, has more experience, or it's totally the mind. So the reason I say that is, how do you explain to someone who doesn't understand how hypnosis works?
Well, first and foremost, before I even explain how hypnosis works, I want to explain a little bit about how the mind works, right? And I want people to understand that the conscious mind is much smaller than the subconscious mind. So the subconscious has already been programmed, hypnotized, if you will, over years and years. That's why my program is called Unhypnosis. Because to me, it's more important to remove the bad, to remove the negative programming, than to implant the positive. It's really a question of waking up from all those things that you think and believe to be true. So it really ultimately comes down to being present to your own stuff. Oh, look, there I go again. But not believing everything you think.
Right.
So
yeah, I like that. Don't believe everything you think.
Don't believe everything you think.
Yeah.
So hypnosis has a bad rap, I think, in the general parlance. A lot of people think of it as weird or mystical, and it really isn't. It's a very psychological thing, and what it essentially is a way of putting you into a state where your conscious mind is relaxed and is sort of set aside for the time being so we have more access to the subconscious. We all go in and out of hypnotic states all day long anyway. It's part of our physiology. If you've ever gotten a drive home and suddenly you're home and you don't know how you got there, that's a hypnotic state.
Right.
So
and
what
would you say that routine is the cause of that?
Routine, definitely, yeah. Routine and what's the word I'm looking for? Repetition.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if I want to hypnotize somebody, I'm going to use a certain kind of voice tone.
Right.
I'll use a certain type of repetitive word choice. And in doing that, it kind of lulls the conscious mind to, not to sleep fully, but just to tip the scale so that I'm speaking more directly to the subconscious. When I'm doing that, now I have access. And now in doing that, ultimately, if I have 21 days to give you that process, give you a receptive mind, eliminate negativity, implant positive message. If I did that with you for 21 days, if I did that with anybody for 21 days, what would happen is they would have what we call the awakened mind. And the awakened mind is the people that you already know who are already successful. Mm-hmm. These are some of the qualities that you see. They've got a sense of humor. They don't take themselves too seriously. They don't get too torqued out when people say no to them. They think on their feet very effectively. They know what to say and when to say it, and they don't have to practice that. It's just sort of, it's in them. It's ingrained.
Right.
They feel more vibrant, more healthy, more motivated. They spot opportunity more readily, and they are recipients of what's called synchronicity, which is an experience of coincidence. Things just happening. You've had the experience yourself where you're in the zone, everything feels good, and suddenly people come up to you and say, "Hey, I heard that you're in such and such a company." And you're like, "Whoa, how'd that happen?"
Right.
You're in the flow, and when you're in the flow, those things happen for whatever reason. So that's why it's very important to create that reprogrammed mind in order to create the awakened mind.
Right.
And so when the awakened mind happens, a lot of this stuff becomes effortless. And that's why we start influencing whole teams, because you create a culture inside of a company.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think in that sense, it's a lot like striking a tuning fork. And, once you hit it, and once you, I guess, work with someone and they have a team below them, then it resonates throughout the entire team.
Yeah, leadership is a powerful thing.
Yeah.
And we as leaders are responsible to do the work ourselves. You don't want to be an uninspiring leader. You want to be somebody who has already cleared out your baggage. You want to be somebody who has the right belief systems.
Right.
And therefore, you're not relying on everybody else, but you've got something to offer them.
Yeah.
Powerful step.
And what have you found to be, in working with all these network marketers, what have you found to be the most common, hang-ups?
Well, we all know what they are. There's part of it's fear. Mm-hmm. In fact, fear is at the base of 90% of it. So when people say, "I don't have time," people in my town don't believe in network marketing, and I don't think they're going to believe me. A lot of that doubt stuff really comes out of fear. Right. And when we overcome fear, it's a powerful deterrent to that. Sometimes it's overwhelm or discouragement. I tell a story about one of my coaching clients who had been a very successful network marketer, but she ended up falling out with somebody who was at the top of one of the legs of her company, and the woman basically mutinied and ended up taking a lot of people with her.
Wow.
And so my client was so traumatized by that experience. Not only did it cause a major hit on her financially, but what happened was she came to believe, and probably because it already resonated with her old childhood beliefs, nobody likes me, I'm not a good leader, I don't deserve to be successful, and all these were very toxic beliefs that were seeping back in despite the success that she had already enjoyed.
Right.
So when I got together with her, I began to notice all that, and we put her through those 3 steps. We made her receptive. We got rid of the negative beliefs. We gave her positive ones to believe in, and all of a sudden she started turning things around, and she ended up going back. This was after a period of 8 years of being depressed and anxious, and she'd really put her business aside. Came right back again. She became very successful. She won a car. It was all the stuff, all the fun stuff, but that comes later, right? So she did it all, but the best part for me was that she called me from the first conference that she went back to. And all these people were coming up to her saying, "Kim, we missed you. Where have you been? We love you." And she didn't have any idea that people actually felt that way about her. And,
that's awesome.
I mean, she was crying when she was talking to me, and I'm getting teary up just thinking about it. Because, again, the only difference was her belief. That was it. She had all the skills. She had no resources. She had the team. All she needed was to believe it was possible.
And what did you do to unlock that or help her unlock that?
Well, the beauty of it was that it was, as I said, she already had it. All I needed to do was unlock it. And for her, we used the system that, the unhypnosis system, which was, she was listening to the unhypnosis audio program every night for 21 days consecutively. She was talking to me a couple times a week as well. So she was a hard case. We had to really work hard with her. But generally, with most people, if they listen to that audio, they're going to have a period of time during which they're simply going into a hypnotic type state. We're inducing a relaxed state. Then they're going to do the process of removing the negative. Then they're going to be listening to the positive messages. And then as they go along, they'll also have ways of implanting positive messages that they're inspired to come up with, but only when they're inspired from within. Not trying to be inspired by what they think other people think success is.
Right.
And so that process has been dramatic, and we've been, that particular program, I don't know if you knew this, Brian, but the Unhypnosis for Direct Sellers, Network Marketers, and Entrepreneurs was named one of the top 25 must-have products by Direct Selling Live.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we're very proud of that.
Yeah.
And, hundreds of people have gone through that program, and we have, dozens and dozens of testimonials from people who have made progress. But in the last, 2.5 months, I was working with a network marketing company, and the leader of the company wanted to see what we could do to influence a larger number of people.
Yep.
So we created this program called the 21 and 21 Challenge.
Okay.
And what we're doing is we're taking we've had the leader of that very large team. He's the top guy in this company. Put the word out to his entire downline, and we put a couple hundred people into a 21-day program. And what that 21-day program is every night they're going to be listening to that audio program. And every day they're going to be going onto this website. They're going to be tracking their results.
Yep.
They're going to be sharing in an accountability module what's in their way, what's stopping them. They're going to be writing down 5 to 7 people that they're going to be calling the next day or approaching the next day in business. And then the next day after that, they're going to write whether they did it or not. So there's a whole accountability system built into it. And rather than putting people through like what would be $1,000 worth of coaching, we're putting them into this program for less than the price of the actual audio. So for $39, each person on the team will call in, not even call in, just log in, do that work, listen to the audio, and for 21 days they're going to be sort of embraced in this very comprehensive process. They're going to watch a little 3-minute success video every day. They're going to have 3 live calls with me and with the team leaders. And so this is called the 21 and 21 Challenge. And we're excited about it because we're going to be replicating that in network marketing companies. Anybody who sees the wisdom in that approach will want to have conversations with them about putting that together for the team.
And it's very valuable too, because you have that internal process of going through and kind of ridding yourself of those barriers, but at the same time you're doing it with other people. But you're not doing it with other people in the sense that a lot of these trainings, they force people to go through the same journey, but you don't have to go. It doesn't work because not everybody's traveling the same path, but they all have the same destination.
Right, exactly.
And that's really valuable. So what have you seen? I mean, after you've spoken and done things on stage, have you had people right after that, just from that, see success with breaking those barriers and come back to you?
Yeah, it happens because I'm out there in the field a lot, and we'll have people come up to me who I hypnotized the year before, and they, I don't know what you did to me, but I have so much more energy and I'm so much more focused and, that kind of thing. But the people who are utilizing the program and actually going through it for the full 21 days, we've got lots of, if you want to edit one in, I've got lots of video testimonials about that. Because, again, the things that people write back or video back about aren't just that they're making more money or that they're taking more action, but that there's a sort of effortlessness and easiness about their experience that they didn't have before, and that they're experiencing that magic or that synchronicity that we talked about. That's the stuff that excites me. I love when people who were like really, they kind of were clamped down,
right? And
now they're like, I get it. It's hard to capture that if you're at a conference and you see you see a top leader, a Kevin Marino, a Bob Duran, these guys who are like they're funny, they're lighthearted, they're great people, they're having a good time. they're not taking their lives too seriously, and they're making a lot of money.
Yeah, and they're not, and I think a lot of people might object to that and say, well, they're enjoying their life because they're making a lot of money, but they were doing that before.
No, they totally were before. I've seen. In fact, I watched with this particular group. They were the top earners in their company to begin with. They were already doing well, but they weren't doing like amazing. It was a new company. We introduced them to the Unhypnosis audio program, and a number of their team started using the program.
Mm-hmm.
And the first year, they did a 22% increase in growth. That was before the program. The next year, the year that they had the program, they made a 100% increase in growth.
Wow.
We're expecting a higher percentage when they go through the team process 21 and 21.
That's only unlocking internal barriers. That's not any new fancy system or internet marketing or any strategy. That's solely just unlocking what's already inside you. And I think I got an email from someone, and it was actually an email from a service called The Universe. That's Tut's Universe. And it said, it was a great quote. It was, everything that you will ever need is inside you right now.
It's absolutely true. Now granted, there are things you need to learn about, like the how-to of the business.
Right.
But 99% of the people who are dropping out of network marketing, 99% of the people in your downline who are either not taking action or are like on their way out the door are simply not doing it because they don't have the mindset for it. You've trained them. They know how to do it. They know what the rudiments of it are. And, a lot of times we end up training people over and over and over again. It gets exhausting because they think and you think that the problem is they didn't get trained in the first place. And what it really is, they got trained and it got locked away in some little pocket of their soul that doesn't open up until their belief system lines up.
Yeah. And I'm gonna pause there and ask, because usually we ask for an action that people can take today to step forward. And I'm gonna link all of the links that we talked about in terms of your audio training and everything else below. But I want to give some extra time to you because what is something that someone can do right now today that they can basically use to unlock those barriers from within themselves, even just one of them that makes them see the power of, just being their true selves.
Can we take a few minutes and just do a sort of sample induction so I can show people how to put yourself in that state of mind?
Absolutely.
Let's do that. This is something to be done if you're not driving, but I assume since you're watching this, you're not driving. Let's hope.
We do have an audio, so if anyone's listening on audio, just either pull over or pause.
This is something that's really strictly for you to do in the comfort of your own home in a quiet, comfortable place where you won't be interrupted. And this is a sample of an experience that goes much, much deeper and has much more power when it's done fully, completely, and of course repetitively. But we'll give you a taste. Okay? Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in. Let it all the way out. Let your mind relax. Let yourself settle down into the seat that you're sitting in, or perhaps if you're laying down, let yourself settle on in. And take a nice deep breath in, and let it all the way out. Letting go of tension, letting go of stress, and committing yourself to a few moments of relaxation. Place your attention on the physical sensations in your body, in particular, on wherever your body comes into contact with another surface. So if you're laying down, just notice where your body comes into contact with the bed. If you're sitting up, just notice where your body meets the chair, the seat, the back, and beneath you. Notice if your hands are resting on your lap, the weight of your hands as they touch your lap. Just notice any place where there's contact being made. Just allow yourself to be aware of that sensation and just breathe into it, soften and relax. Allow a wave of relaxation to move down your body now from the top of your head right down to the tips of your toes, feeling your forehead relaxing, the muscles of your eyes, down the sides of the face to the jaw, and all the muscles around your mouth begin to relax deeper and deeper, and deeper into total, complete relaxation. Breathing in relaxation, breathing out stress, breathing out tension. Allow that wave of relaxation to continue down your body, down your shoulders and arms. Your chest relaxes all the way down into your belly. Your lower abdomen, your groin relaxes, your thighs, your calves, your knees, ankles, your feet, and your toes. Just like that. And now I want to count backwards from 10 down to 0. As I do, imagine yourself doubling your relaxation with each number that I count. Floating and drifting like a leaf on the breeze. 10, 9, floating and drifting, 8, 7, just letting go, 6, letting down, 5, when I reach the number 1,
Imagine yourself just laying down on a comfortable bed, resting peacefully. 6, 5, 4, 3, lay on down now. 2, and 1. In this state of peaceful, relaxed concentration, your mind is open to positive and beneficial suggestions. As we deepen this state, each time we deepen it, you go deeper and you feel more receptive to positive and beneficial messages. In this state, you can begin to explore the possibility that you are successful. You are successful now. Success comes before the money. Fame comes before the acknowledgement. It's a decision that you get to make right now, regardless of your past. And so decide now that you are successful. Say to yourself, I am successful. Success comes easily and effortlessly to me. I am a money magnet. I enjoy that experience. Notice any resistance that occurs in your mind whenever those words come to you. And as the resistance appears, imagine that you can feel that resistance in your body. Notice it, where it resides, what it feels like. Imagine that resistance, if it exists, as if it were a bundle or a package taking up space inside of your body. It's got a size, a shape, a density, a color, and a location. And as you watch that bundle, that package inside of you, imagine it getting smaller and smaller, smaller and smaller, until soon it's so small it'll fit in one hand. When it's small enough to fit in one hand, grab a hold of it, throw it away, letting go of that resistance, that fear, that discouragement, that resistance, now and forever, once and for all. Breathing in relaxation, breathing out stress, knowing that each time you do this, it becomes more real, takes you deeper, it becomes more substantial in your being, removes more of the negativity and opens you to more positivity, because now your mind is open to positive and beneficial suggestions. As you take your next few deep breaths, you notice you can fit more air in your lungs without that bundle taking up space. And you're more powerful than your fears, more powerful than your discouragement. And so before we arise from this state, you just say to yourself, I am successful. I enjoy the experience of network marketing. I am not attached to the outcome. I'm happy. I have something wonderful to offer. I'm willing to take risks with myself. I'm willing to take risks in the world. I'm willing to be the person that I know I can be and influence others in the process. And for that, I rejoice. And so in a moment, I'm going to have you open your eyes back up again on the count of 5, feeling alert and awake, refreshed and relaxed, happy, healthy, and confident, and just a little bit freer of that negativity. Knowing that each time we do this, we go deeper. Knowing that you're willing to take the risk to try something new, and to be something better. Here we go. 1, slowly and calmly, easily and gently beginning to return to your full awareness once again. 2, from head to toe, you're feeling perfect in every way. 3, every muscle, every ligament, every nerve is tingling like waking up from a long nap. 4, your eyes are sparkling clear, like crystal clear streams of water. And the next number, eyes open, wide awake. 1, 2, 3, 4, and deep breath in, eyes open, 5. And I could see by your face there, Brian, that you're pretty spaced out and relaxed, and I'm sure a lot of other people are too. That's the tip of the iceberg, really. That's right. Just a very small sample of what it is to experience affirmations in a whole different way.
Yeah.
Right? So now, in continuing that process, there are a few things that you can do, right? You can find a hypnotist, a hypnotherapist, which is a very effective thing to do. The problem, of course, is that, where do you find one? Mm-hmm. Are they any good? Are they certified? Do they know anything whatsoever about network marketing? And do they know anything about NFT, so they understand the process of removing negativity? And then, of course, there's the cost of that, which is, in the thousands of dollars to be able to really replicate this process over the long haul. Or you can make your own audio. So for those of you who are do-it-yourselfers, what you do is you get a CD, you get a really nice piece of relaxing music, you start playing the relaxing music, and you do sort of like what I did, kind of a countdown induction.
Right.
Just make yourself very relaxed. And then you use that neurolinguistic technique I use to take whatever is in your way and visualize it and begin to shrink it, move it. And there are different methods to doing that, but you do something to allow you to physically remove that. And then the third step is to then begin to implant the positive messages. And again, my recommendation is don't make them up yourself. Go ask your upline. Go ask the successful people how to do that.
Right.
The
That's
third
awesome. Oh, go ahead.
is the choice that that we made, which was to utilize a pre-created program that does all that in a professional way. Unfortunately, nothing like that existed in the industry, which is why we created the hypnosis.
It's an amazing program that I'm going to link below. And by the time that this is actually posted live, and I'll say this as well, is that we've discussed creating some awesome content together. And I'm really looking forward to that. And by the time that this is live, that will be available. So I'm going to link that below as well. And I'm really looking forward to it because your book, your program, they really do help to unlock what's already inside of people and help them to just kind of get out of their own way. There's like the drastic simplification of what it actually does. But your story, your experience has been amazing. And thank you so much for coming on. And I really look forward to creating that content with you and getting it out there.
Great pleasure, guys. Thanks so much. Thanks, Brian.
I'll see you again soon.